Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are new to my channel, hi, my name is Elizabeth. And if you're coming back, hi, I hope you're doing great. I'm sure that you read the title of this video and you thought, I'm gonna click on that. It could be out of curiosity, or it could be because you're struggling with the same issue. It could be on a different level altogether. It could be something very similar to what we're going through. I have a son, or we have a son, that has high functioning autism as well as a speech delay. I don't typically like to talk about this subject, but I've had several people asking questions about it, and people who are genuinely curious, and they just don't know how to approach the subject. If I seem like I'm somewhere else, it's because I'm trying to recollect a lot of memories. There have been a lot of things that have happened and a lot of things that we have had to go through in order for us to get from point A to point B. Before I start the video, there's a couple of disclaimers that I want to give. The first one is I am really hot in this room. My office is like an oven and it's so humid outside. Our AC and our insulation in this room is not the best, so that's why I look a little miserable. And then disclaimer number 2 is the most important. I'm not a physician. I am not a therapist. I'm not a specialist. I am not a nurse. I am not a caregiver, a professional caregiver. And I'm only going to be sharing this as the parent of a child with autism. I don't have any medical background, and I definitely don't deal with this on a professional level. This is strictly our experience as parents, and that's exactly what I'm going to treat it as. I hope that this video will help somebody out there who is either struggling to understand their own child, or who is going through the process of having their child diagnosed, or just simply a parent who is curious and they are suspicious, or somebody who might just be curious and they just want to learn more about it. All I ask of you is that you are kind and that you take into consideration that we are an everyday family, and that you think before you type anything unkind. This is the main reason why I didn't really want to share any of this, because there's a lot of kind people in the world, but there's also a lot of people who don't think before they speak, and that is something that over the past couple years we have learned, that sometimes you have to distance yourself from somebody that is not going to bring anything positive into your life, especially when you have somebody in your home who requires special needs. Unfortunately, we have had to cut a lot of people from our life, and we have also had to distance ourselves from people who we thought were good for us and for our child, but ultimately that ended up not being the case. And so that, as hurtful and painful as it has been a better decision for everybody's mental health. And with that, I'll just go ahead and start the video, and here goes nothing. Simon was born on a Sunday, and he was 10 days early from his due date. Everything was fine. I had a fairly normal pregnancy. The only thing that I would consider atypical would be that I had a very bad morning sickness. It was more like 24/7 sickness. For about the first 5 months of the pregnancy, I ate little to nothing, and I could barely tolerate water. It was very tough. As time progressed with the pregnancy, things got better, and I was actually able to eat a little bit more. So when we got to the hospital, everything was pretty normal. I was in pain because I was already dilating. I got to 7 centimeters and I got the epidural, but Simon's heart rate started becoming really irregular, and it started going up and down very crazy, and it got to the point where they couldn't find his heart rate anymore in the monitor, and they had to plug a little like a needle on the top of his head, and he almost flatlined twice. It was a very, very scary moment. Because I already had the epidural, the doctor just said, you know what, his heart is becoming very irregular. And he got stuck right here at his temple. So he just said, we're just going to go ahead and take you to the OR. In that moment, I just thought, you know what, I just want to have a healthy baby. Let's go ahead and go with that. I got rolled into the OR. Andy, my husband, he got put in scrubs and a hat and like the mouth cover thingy, and about 45 minutes after, we had Simon. He came out, everything was fine, everything was perfect. He had 10 fingers, 10 toes, and he was crying and his lungs were strong. Everything while we were staying in the hospital was really normal. And the strangeness started when we went home. We spent about a week at my mom's house, and I noticed that this child was always crying. When you have a newborn, these babies sleep a lot, and then, you know, they wake up every 2 hours or so to eat. But he was always crying, and I just couldn't understand why. And I swear for the first 5 months of his life, I didn't sleep because he would eat and throw up, and his tummy was empty. So every hour on the hour, literally, I was waking up to feed him. I was breastfeeding, so it just took everything out of me. I just remember being very, very tired. And other than that, he hit every milestone. He was smiling, and he was making noises and babbling about, and he was crawling and then standing and then walking and then running. But I did notice that he was a very picky eater, and I just thought that was odd. But I was a picky eater as a child, so I thought maybe he just inherited that from me. And then when he turned about 2 years old, something just wasn't quite right. He didn't regress, but he started not developing as quickly or at the same level as other children. And I remember mentioning it to his doctor on more than one occasion. And he said, no, everything's fine. He's meeting all his milestones, and he's eating, and he's growing, and his weight is fantastic, and his height is good. He's fine. And he'll just grow out of it. He'll grow out of it. Everything's normal. I just kept hearing that, and something in me just kept saying, no, that doesn't sound right, but I'll go with it until I see you in a couple months again. Well, it got to the point where he turned 3 years old, and his brother was about to turn 2 because they're only 14 months apart. And his brother was speaking a whole lot more than he was. So to me, that was a huge red flag. So I made another appointment. And by whatever you want to call it, luck, grace of God, I don't know, whatever, we got in with a new PA, physician's assistant, that they got in their office. This really kind lady. And I explained to her what our situation was and what we had been dealing with and how things just didn't seem quite right. And she said, okay, let's go ahead and go through this questionnaire, and if we see something off, then we'll go ahead and send him to get checked out. He missed about a good portion, I don't know the exact amount of the questions, but the questions were something about development, and it was simple little things like pointing and how he played with his vehicles. He would just line them all up. He didn't really play with cars, like, you know, like making the sound and the motion as though they're going, or shooting them across the room. He would just line them all up. she just kind of paused for a second and was like, you know what, we're just gonna send him into the neurologist. She said, let's just go ahead and make sure that everything is medically okay so that we have a base for the insurance. Let's do that. But then I started doing research, and everybody just started saying psychologists and therapists and like all these other things that had nothing to do with the neurologist. He doesn't, knock on wood, have any seizures. So I just thought it was a little odd that we would be sent to the neurologist, but I scheduled an appointment. This happened in March of 2015, and I wasn't able to get an appointment until January of 2016 because that's how booked this doctor was. It was just this whole thing. So I started calling around. We took Simon to go get an evaluation at a pre-K center where we used to live at. And I knew he knew his letters and he knew his numbers and his shapes and his colors, everything that the curriculum required. But for some reason, when we went to do the evaluation, he just would not sit still. He kept wanting to run around and just act silly, and he wouldn't focus on what he had in front of him. It was just really eye-opening. And so when I talked to the teacher, she said, you know what? If he can't sit still, I cannot evaluate him because I have no idea what he actually knows. So then I was like, okay, I understand. So we left, and then that afternoon she called again and she said, hey, would you mind coming back tomorrow? Tomorrow afternoon, I have another teacher that maybe she might be able to get him evaluated. I said, yeah, of course. So we went back, and the same thing happened, and it turns out that this other person that she brought in was a teacher who had a special education background. And she said, you know, I hate to say it, but you might want to get him checked out because I just see way too many things for him to not be looked at. So I said, okay. I called his doctor's office and they said, well, you already have the neurologist appointment. So the more and more I started doing research, I come to find out that there is an early intervention program. I started calling everybody, literally. I called the state, I called early intervention, I called our county, I called the school district, I called our insurance, I called our doctor's office, I called like 2 or 3 people, numbers, just random numbers that I had gotten from friends for like all these different people that dealt with special education or something in relation to that. And I sent so many emails and made so many phone calls because I just needed somebody to hear me out because something just wasn't right. And this teacher validated all those feelings that I had had for almost 4 years. I just needed some answers. Finally, a lady from the state called me. She said he already missed the age cap, so you're gonna have to go through the school district. So I called the school district, and finally, I will never forget, this sweet lady named Elena called me back. Elena calls me back and she says, we're gonna have him evaluated. I'm gonna give you an appointment so that he can see our psychologist, a speech therapist, and a nurse. So the appointment was about 2 weeks out. They had us in a room and they interviewed us, gave us a bunch of paperwork, and while they were asking us questions, he was just playing around with a bunch of different toys, and they would ask him questions, and they would just try to get a feel for his personality. It was just a quick 1 hour thing, and then they said, okay, we'll call you and let you know what's next. They didn't say yes, he has anything, or no, he doesn't have anything, nothing like that. So I waited for a couple days, and then they called me. I don't remember the exact timeline, but they called me and they said, you need to come back in 2 weeks to do a more thorough evaluation, and this is all the information that we need. So we went back, and the second eval was about, I'm gonna say 3 hours. It was quite a long period of time, and it was with the same 3 people. And they said, okay, we're just checking him out again, but it's a little more thorough and it's gonna be a little longer. And then they said, okay, you need to come back for a 3rd time. And this time it was just the original psychologist that I saw the first 2 times, and a second psychologist. It was only for about an hour. And then they said, okay, well, we'll call you again. Here we go, the waiting game. Then I get the call. They say, we have some results and we would like for you to come in. So I come in, and they say, as kindly as possible, we do see autistic tendencies in Simon, so he's gonna have to be in a special education program. They start going over all these things that I truly just don't remember anymore, because I just remember being overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed with everything that we had gone through with him, and I was overwhelmed with all the research and all the information that I had just looked at. And I was overwhelmed with them saying, yes, you were right. And it was, in part, it was relief, and at the same time, it was like, damn it, what did we just get into? So then they tell me, okay, we're gonna meet with the special education teacher that he's probably going to see. We're gonna see if they're the right fit, if this is what we're going to do. And that's when we met Judy. And I don't think I'll ever forget that day.